Led by instinct alone, animals pair off, male and female links in the endless chain of life. And when the newborn arrive, they are nursed by their mothers, looked after only until they are able to forage for themselves in the elemental world in which they live. Social, psychological, and emotional needs and desires unique to human beings have given rise to many customs of courtship and marriage, which know no season. And because a child's dependence on his parents lasts for many years, man's conscious awareness has led to a sense of responsibility not shared by lower species of the animal kingdom. All of these and many other factors play essential roles in the story of human reproduction. This film, however, deals only with the basic structure and function of the human reproductive process. An understanding of this process is important for all, and begins with the simple, clear knowledge that birth is the result of a physical union of the father and the mother, who contribute equally to the conception and resulting birth of their child. It is the reproductive system of each that we are now going to consider. Reproductive systems that are developed to an almost unbelievable degree of complexity and perfection. First, let us consider that of the man. Just beneath the penis, which is usually small and relaxed, is the scrotum. This pouch contains 2 testicles, from which 2 tubes called vas deferens lead upward, as shown here in simplified schematic fashion. To understand the function of these organs, it will help if we visualize their position in the body as seen in this side view. First, the testicles. They produce the hormones responsible for such male characteristics as his beard, muscular body, deep voice, and skin texture. After puberty, the testicles manufacture the male sex cells, spermatozoa, or sperm, too small to be seen by the naked eye, but made visible here through the help of a powerful microscope. These sperm cells are produced and stored in a mass of curled tubes. The vas deferens we've already mentioned as the name given to 2 tubes leading upward from the testicles. In this side view, we see only one of these tubes. Note how the vas deferens goes around the bladder and finally joins the urethra, the tube through which the bladder is emptied. Over here are the seminal vesicles. This is the prostate gland. Both serve important functions. During sexual stimulation, the penis becomes engorged with blood, causing it to become firm and erect. It is only in this state that it can be introduced into the female sex organs, effecting intercourse, or coitus. Stimulation of the penis causes the muscles of the vas deferens to contract. This propels the sperm toward the urethra. At the same time, the seminal vesicles and prostate gland also contract and add their fluids to the sperm, thus forming semen. The semen, containing on the average about 100 million active sperm, is then ejected from the penis through the urethra. This ejection is known as ejaculation. To understand how this can lead to the birth of a baby, let us turn our attention to the woman's reproductive system.
On the surface of a woman's genital organs are folds of skin or tissue called labia. As we can see in this schematic view, the labia protect the opening of the urethra through which urine from the bladder is emptied, and which also shields the entrance to the vagina. The vagina is a passageway to the reproductive organs, and because the baby will eventually come through it, it's often called the birth canal. Usually, just behind the labia, a membrane known as the hymen partially covers the entrance to the vagina. At the upper end of the vagina is the cervix, which is Latin for neck, neck of the uterus. The uterus is a pear-shaped hollow organ frequently called the womb. It is within the uterus that the unborn baby will grow and develop. The walls of the uterus are thick and muscular, and during pregnancy they will grow as the uterus enlarges to many times its original size in order to accommodate the growing child. Seen in a frontal view, the reproductive organs appear like this. From the upper portion of the uterus, two tubes, called the fallopian tubes, extend toward the ovaries, one on each side of the body. Each ovary is about 1.5 inches in length. At puberty, the ovaries begin to produce hormones responsible for the development of female characteristics, such as breasts, hair, skin texture, and so on. The other primary function of the ovaries is to produce ova, tiny eggs, one of which matures approximately every 28 days. As an egg reaches maturity, it breaks through the surface of the ovary in the process called ovulation. At this time, its size is that of a pinpoint. We show it here greatly magnified in relation to the other organs. The egg slowly makes its way through the fallopian tube toward the uterus. It is capable of becoming a baby, but only when fertilized by sperm from a man. Meanwhile, the lining of the uterus has become thick, soft, and enriched with blood, so that should the egg become fertilized, the uterus will be ready to receive and nourish it. If the egg is not fertilized, it disintegrates. In this case, the blood-enriched uterine wall lining is not needed and is shed through the vagina. This shedding is called menstruation and usually lasts 4 to 5 days. If we call this beginning of menstruation the first day of the menstrual cycle, we can watch the various stages as they recur during each 28-day period. After the menstrual flow stops, about the 4th day, the uterine lining begins to build up again. Meanwhile, another egg is reaching maturity. In the normal cycle, ovulation occurs about the 14th day, and the egg starts its passage through the fallopian tube. If not fertilized, the egg disintegrates. After the 28th day, menstruation occurs again, and the cycle is repeated. This, then, is the structure and function of the female reproductive organs. The ovaries, which discharge a mature egg into the fallopian tubes about every 28 days. The uterus, which during the same period gets ready to receive the egg in case it is fertilized by the male sperm. If fertilization of the egg does not occur, the egg disintegrates, and the uterine wall linings break down and are discharged as the menstrual flow. Although this timetable may be shortened or lengthened, or even interrupted by illness or emotional stress, the cycle is repeated each month unless fertilization of an egg occurs. Fertilization takes place only when a sperm cell unites with the ovum. When the semen, containing millions of sperm, is deposited in the woman's vagina by ejaculation during intercourse, the sperm begin to move about in all directions under their own power. Many of the sperm enter the cervix and travel up the uterus into the fallopian tubes, where they may remain alive for 48 hours or even longer. fertilization, if it is going to take place, will do so here. Fertilization means that the egg from the mother and the sperm from the father merge and become one cell. Normally, only one sperm enters and fertilizes the egg. Contained in this cell are the chemical materials that make up the characteristics inherited from both parents. As the fertilized cell travels through the fallopian tube toward the uterus, it divides into two. It continues its division. The 2 become 4. The 4 become 8, and so on. As yet, all the cells appear to be identical, and the small cluster which they form carries its own nourishment. The uterine wall at this stage of its regular cycle has become thick, soft, and enriched with blood. When the cluster of cells reaches the uterus, it finds the wall ready to receive it, and it nests itself within the spongy tissue. Since the uterine wall is not to be shed this time, the menstrual cycle has halted and will not resume again until sometime after birth. Meanwhile, a series of marvelously complex and closely related changes are about to take place. To meet new demands, the mother's heart action and blood flow are increased. The uterus, with its thick, muscular walls, enlarges to keep pace with the growing embryo. At the same time, the breasts begin to grow larger, getting ready to produce milk for the baby when it is born. Even the ligaments that hold the bones of the pelvis together begin preparation that will enable them to adjust to the passage of the baby when it is born. But let us return to the developing embryo within the uterus. In this favorable environment, the cluster of cells continues to multiply rapidly. These cells are no longer identical. Instead, they are taking on specialized functions as they begin to form the different organs and parts of the unborn child. At this time, the embryo receives its nourishment from a yolk sac. Both are connected to the uterine wall by a stalk. This stalk will soon develop into the umbilical cord. The embryo at 4 weeks looks like this and resembles that of most other mammals at a similar stage of growth. At 8 weeks, the limbs assume more specific shape. The head becomes relatively large due to the early growth of the human brain, and this growth characteristic continues. At 12 weeks, the fetus, as it is now called, develops human facial characteristics, as well as the fingers and toes and the external sex organs. In the 4th month, the fetus averages 6 inches in length. The baby is now almost halfway to birth, and development from now on is that of continued growth and refinement of individual organs and tissues. By the 5th or 6th month, its position within the mother's body may be head down, and its heartbeat can be heard. The umbilical cord is now fully developed and connects the fetus to the placenta, also called the afterbirth, because it will be expelled immediately after the baby is born. The placenta connects the growing baby to the mother. Composed primarily of blood vessels, it is attached to the wall of the uterus. Nourishment for the baby is carried in the mother's blood to the uterine wall and eventually reaches the baby's bloodstream. The blood vessels of the placenta serve as a bridge because the mother's bloodstream is never directly connected to that of her child. The placenta and umbilical cord make it possible for oxygen and food elements to pass from the mother's blood to the child's blood. waste materials pass from child to mother. Growth continues, and about this time, the mother can feel the baby's movements, sometimes referred to as quickening. The bag of special fluid which surrounds the baby is commonly called the bag of waters. The fluid acts as a shock absorbent and keeps the baby warm and safe. By the end of 9 months, he averages 18 inches in length and weighs from 6 to 8 pounds. He is completely developed and ready to be born. The birth takes place in 3 stages. During the first and longest stage, lasting an average of 3 to 6 hours, the uterus prepares itself. Involuntary muscular contractions begin, gradually becoming more frequent. The purpose of these first contractions is to open the cervix to allow the baby to pass through. During the second stage, the muscular contractions change to exert their force downward. About now, the bag of waters breaks. The mother begins to help push the baby through the birth canal. The contractions come even more rapidly. They become stronger. This second stage is much shorter than the first. Finally, the baby's head becomes visible between the labia as the physician prepares to receive it.
This is how a baby is born. This is how a new child is brought into the world. The cycle of life has begun again. From 2 cells, a woman's egg and a man's sperm that merge into one, comes the child who himself will grow up to be a parent. From the unions of fathers and mothers come the children, who themselves will learn one day that becoming a parent is one of life's greatest joys and one of its greatest responsibilities.